You've seen the headline, skip your $5 latte and you'll retire with an extra $500,000. It's the most repeated piece of money advice on the internet. So I opened a spreadsheet and I actually did the math. Carefully. Honestly. No rounding in my own favor, no quietly assuming a return the market rarely delivers. And the number that came back was not the number they promise you. It was smaller, a lot smaller. And for a minute, I was almost disappointed, like I'd caught the whole personal finance world in a little lie, which as it turns out, I sort of had. But then I kept going. I looked at what that real number actually was and where it came from and what it was quietly pointing at. And somewhere in there, the disappointment turned into something else. Because I realized the coffee was never the point. The coffee was a doorway. And what's on the other side of it is the single most powerful force in your entire financial life. A force almost nobody explains properly, precisely because they're too busy yelling at you about lattes. So stick with me here, because by the end of this, I'm going to show you the honest number for one coffee. I'm going to show you the one number that makes it explode into something that genuinely could change your life. And it isn't the price of the coffee. It's something else entirely. Let's do the math I actually did. Start with the coffee, a real one. $5 on the way to work. Now, the first thing every clickbait version of this gets wrong is that they charge you for that coffee every single day of the year. 365 lattes. But you don't buy a $5 coffee on Christmas, or on the Saturday you sleep in, or on vacation. You buy it on the way to work. So let's be honest and count workdays. That's about 22 a month. $5, 22 times is $110 a month. That's your real coffee habit, not the inflated version, the true one. Now we invest it. Every month, that $110 goes into a broad, low-cost index fund instead of a paper cup. And here's the second place the internet cheats you, the return they assume. You'll see people run these numbers at 10%, sometimes 12%, because bigger assumptions make bigger headlines. But the honest long-run number, once you account for inflation eating away at your dollars, is closer to 7%. So that's what we'll use. 7, the number a careful person would actually plan around. $110 a month, 7%. 30 years, and the answer comes back about $134,000. Now, sit with that for a second because your reaction to it tells you everything. $134,000 is a genuinely large amount of money. If someone offered to hand it to you today, you would not laugh. It could be a paid-off chunk of a mortgage, it could be a car and a wedding and a very good year off, all at once. But it is not the $500,000 they promised you. It's barely a quarter of it. The headline oversold the coffee by nearly 400%. And it did it by counting weekends you don't buy coffee and assuming returns you probably won't get. So that was the moment I sat back a little deflated, thinking, so the coffee thing is basically a myth. And then it got worse because I did one more calculation. And this is the one nobody wants to do. That $134,000 arrives 30 years from now. And dollars 30 years from now are worth a lot less than dollars today because of inflation. So I asked the uncomfortable question, what is that future pile actually worth in today's money, in the world you live in today? With today's prices? The answer is around $55,000. That's the real, honest, fully adjusted value of skipping one coffee a day for 30 years. Not $500,000, not even the $134,000. About $55,000 of today's dollars. Meaningful? Yes, absolutely. $55,000 is not nothing, and I'd never tell you it is. But life-changing, retire in luxury, the latte is why you're poor money? No, it just isn't. And anyone who tells you it is has either not done this math or is hoping you won't. So if I'd stopped there, this would be a video about how the coffee thing is a lie, and you should feel free to enjoy your latte in peace. But I didn't stop there, because staring at that number, I finally understood what everyone had been getting wrong, including, honestly, me. When I sat down to make this, the coffee was never supposed to be the hero of this story. The coffee is a magnifying glass, and what it's magnifying is the only thing here that actually matters. Let me show you what I mean, because this is where it stops being about coffee and starts being about you. Go back to that $110 a month. Over 30 years, you personally put in a very specific amount of your own money. $110 times 12 months times 30 years. That's about $39,000 of actual coffee money that came out of your actual pocket over 3 decades. But the pile at the end was $134,000. So where did the other $95,000 come from? You didn't earn it? You didn't deposit it? It appeared. Almost $100,000 that you never worked for, materializing out of thin air on top of the $39,000 you actually saved. That is compound interest. That is the whole game, and it is the most important financial concept that exists. And it is taught to almost no one, so let me actually explain it properly the way somebody should have explained it to you years ago. Here's how it works. You put in your $110, and it earns a little bit of return. Fine, nothing dramatic. But here's the magic. The next year you earn a return on your original money and on the return it already made. Your interest starts earning interest, and then that earns interest. And on, and the growth doesn't add up in a straight line. It curves. It bends upwards, slowly at first, and then in the later years, almost violently. There's an old line that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. That gets repeated so often it's become wallpaper, and people say it without feeling it. So let me try to make you actually feel it. Imagine a single lily pad on a pond, and every day, the lily pads double. 1 becomes 2, 2 become 4, 4 become 8. Now, if the pond is completely covered on day 30, what day was it half covered? Most people's gut says day 15. Halfway through the time, halfway across the pond. It's day 29. On day 29, the pond looks half empty, and you'd swear you had all the time in the world. And then one more doubling, a single day, and it's done. Almost all of the action happened at the very end, in a rush after a long, boring stretch where it looked like nothing much was happening at all. That is precisely how your money grows. For years, it feels slow, almost pointless. You're putting money in, and the pile is barely bigger than what you put in. And every instinct screams that this isn't working. And then the curve reaches its steep part, and the last decade does more than the first two combined, and the interest starts earning more each year than you contribute. Which means the entire secret, the whole thing, the one number that makes or breaks all of it, is not the amount, it's the time. It was never really about the coffee, it was about how many doublings you give it. And that changes everything about how you should think about this. Let me prove it to you. Take that exact same coffee money, $110 a month, 7%. But instead of 30 years, give it 40. Just 10 more years on the front end, start in your 20s instead of your 30s. The pile doesn't grow by a third, it more than doubles. It goes from about 130% of to nearly $290,000. Read that again, the same monthly amount, the same coffee, the same return, 10 extra years, and the result roughly doubles, because those 10 years land on the steep part of the curve, where each doubling is enormous. Now flip it around, because this is the version that should light a fire under you. Imagine you wait. You think, I'll start investing later, when I earn more, when things settle down, when it feels less tight. A completely normal, reasonable thought. And you delay 10 years. That 10-year delay on this tiny coffee amount costs you over $150,000. $150,000 for waiting on a $110 a month habit. Not because you put in less, you might put in almost the same total, but because you stole 10 years of doublings off the end, the most valuable years, the ones doing the heaviest lifting. This is the thing I wish someone had grabbed me by the shoulders and shouted when I was younger. The most expensive financial mistake most people make is not a bad purchase. It's waiting. It's the years they spent not starting, thinking they had nothing worth investing, while the single most valuable asset they owned, time, quietly drained away, a doubling at a time, never to be recovered. You cannot buy those years back later. There is no amount of money at 50 that recreates what a small amount at 25 would have become. The person who starts early and small almost always beats the person who starts late and large, and it isn't close, and the reason is the pond. Now, I can feel the obvious question forming, because I had it too. Where does this money actually come from? Because when you first meet compound interest, it sounds a little like a magic trick, and you're right to be suspicious of magic tricks involving your money. Almost $100,000 appearing out of nowhere. Nowhere is doing a lot of work in that sentence. So let me tell you where nowhere actually is. Because if you don't understand this part, you won't trust it enough to leave it alone. And leaving it alone is the entire skill. When you put that money into a broad index fund, you are not handing it to a bank to sit in a drawer. You are buying tiny slivers of hundreds of real companies, the ones that make the things you use every single day, that employ millions of people, that sell products all over the world. And those companies, in aggregate, grow. They earn profits, they reinvest, they get more valuable over time. When you own a piece of them, their growth becomes your growth. The 7% isn't conjured from thin air. It's your share of an entire economy of people getting up every morning and going to work, and you, quietly, owning a slice of all of it. That's the part that reframes everything. You are not saving money. Saving money is putting it in a jar, where inflation slowly eats it, where $100 becomes worth 90, then 80, while it sits there doing nothing. Investing is something else entirely. Investing is buying ownership of things that grow and then getting out of the way. The jar loses. The ownership compounds. And the difference between those two over a lifetime is the difference between a person who worked for money their whole life and a person who at some point had money working for them. And here's the quiet, almost unfair beauty of it. That economy grows whether or not you're paying attention. It grows while you're at your own job, earning your own paycheck, completely unaware. Once your money is in, you have essentially cloned yourself. There is a second version of you, invisible, that never eats, never rests, never takes a day off, working every hour of every day to make you richer. The only thing that version of you needs is to not be interrupted. Which is why the hardest part of all of this isn't earning the money or even saving it. It's leaving it alone. Because the pond has a cruel feature. The flat, boring years at the beginning, where nothing seems to happen, are the exact years most people quit. They look at the slow start, decide it isn't working, pull the money out to spend on something, and they never reach the steep part where all the real growth was waiting. They walk out of the theater in the boring second act right before everything happens. Let me make this real with two people because the numbers land harder when they have faces. Two friends, same age, same job, same paycheck. Call them Anna and Ben. Anna starts investing in her 20s, just a small amount, barely more than that coffee money, automatically every month. And then, importantly, she stops after only 10 years. Life gets expensive, kids come, and she never adds another dollar after her early 30s. She just leaves what's there alone for the rest of her working life. Ben doesn't start in his 20s. He's busy, money's tight, there's always a reason, and it never feels urgent. He finally gets serious in his 30s, right around the time Anna stops. And then, unlike Anna, he keeps going faithfully every single month for the next 30 years. He contributes for 3 times as long as she did. So who ends up with more? Ben put in far more money over a far longer stretch. The obvious answer is Ben. The obvious answer is wrong. In the classic version of this, Anna wins, or comes remarkably close, despite putting in a fraction of what Ben did, because her money had those 10 extra years on the front end, the 10 years that landed earliest on the curve and got the most doublings. Ben spent his whole life trying to catch up to a head start he could never quite close, because you cannot out-contribute time. He was playing the same game, harder, and losing for one reason. He started late. That is the entire lesson of this video, dressed up in 2 names. It was never about how much, it was about how early. Anna wasn't richer, she wasn't more disciplined, she just gave the machine more time, and the machine rewarded her for it in a way that no amount of later effort could match. So the coffee was never the villain. Waiting is the villain. And now I can finally answer the real question, not should you skip your coffee, but the far better one. What should you actually do with all of this? And here's where I get honest with you in the other direction, because I'm not going to sit here and tell you to give up the coffee. If your morning coffee is one of the genuine small joys of your day, if that warm cup on a cold walk is a little pocket of happiness in a hard week, then keep it. Keep it. A life stripped of every small pleasure in the name of a spreadsheet is not a rich life, it's just a joyless one, with a slightly bigger balance. The people who quit everything they love to save money usually quit saving too, because misery isn't sustainable, and a plane you abandon is worth nothing. So this was never about the coffee, it was about noticing the mechanism and then pointing it at the right target. Because here's the thing, the coffee is small, $110 a month, but the machine you just watched it reveal, the curve, the doublings, the way small money becomes large money if you just give it time. That machine does not care what you feed it. It works on any amount, and most of us have leaks far bigger than a coffee that bring us no joy whatsoever. The subscriptions you forgot you had, the impulse buys that arrive and become clutter, the convenience spending you wouldn't miss for a second. If the coffee brings you joy, keep the coffee, and go find the $110 somewhere it's leaking out of your life invisibly, doing nothing for you, warming no one's hands. And here is what happens when you stop thinking about one coffee and start feeding the machine properly. Say you find not $110, but $500 a month. From the stuff that genuinely doesn't matter to you. The forgotten subscriptions, the delivery fees, the lunches you didn't enjoy, the odds and ends, not by becoming a monk, just by pointing the magnifying glass at the leaks instead of the joys. $500 a month, 7%. 30 years. That's over $600,000. Give it 40 years and it crosses 1 1/3 million. That is the same math, the exact same math as the coffee. The only thing that changed is that you fed the machine an amount worth feeding it for money you never missed, and you gave it time. So let me put a real ordinary person in front of you because I promised you the honest version of this all the way through. Meet Sam. Sam is not rich. Sam is not going to quit coffee because Sam loves coffee and Sam has decided, correctly, that the morning cup stays. But Sam did the thing this video is actually about. Sam sat down one evening and looked honestly for money that was leaking out and bringing no joy back. And Sam found it the way almost everyone does. A couple of streaming services nobody watched. A gym that hadn't been visited in months. The delivery fees on food Sam could have walked to pick up. A subscription box that had stopped being fun a year ago. It added up quietly to around $400 a month. None of it joy, all of it just leaking. Sam kept the coffee, killed the leaks, and then did the one step that almost everyone skips, the step that is the entire difference between knowing this and doing it. Sam set up an automatic transfer the day after payday before the money could evaporate back into life, sending that $400 every month straight into a plain low-cost index fund. And then Sam did the hardest part of all, the part the pond teaches you. Sam left it alone. For the first few years, it was unremarkable. It grew slowly, it looked honestly like it was barely doing anything. And there were months Sam wondered if it mattered. That's the flat part of the curve. That's day 15, day 20, when the pond still looks empty. But Sam had understood the lily pads, so Sam didn't stop. And $400 a month at 7% over 30 years becomes around $485,000. Nearly $500,000 from leaks Sam didn't miss, while still drinking every single cup of coffee Sam ever wanted. Sam didn't get a raise, Sam didn't win anything, Sam didn't suffer, Sam just found the money that was already leaving, and pointed it at the machine, and gave it time. So here's what I actually want you to do, and it is not skip your coffee. First, today, find your $110 or your $400 in the stuff that brings you no joy, not the things you love, the leaks, the forgotten, the automatic, the convenient. Everybody has them, and they are almost never the coffee. Second, and this is the one that matters more than any other sentence in this video, start now. Not when you earn more, not when it feels comfortable, not next year. Now, today, even if it's small, even if it feels almost pointless, because small and now beats large and later so completely it isn't a fair fight. And the only truly unforgivable mistake is waiting, because waiting is the one thing you can never undo. Set up the automatic transfer, make it happen without you, the day after payday, into something boring and broad and low cost. And then, like Sam liked the pond, leave it alone and let the doublings do what they do. Because I started this video thinking I was going to prove the coffee makes you rich, and the honest math proved it doesn't. Not really, not on its own. But the coffee was never the answer. It was just the thing small enough to hold up to the light so you could finally see the machine humming behind it. The machine that turns $39,000 into $134,000, the machine that pays you almost $100,000 you never worked for, as long as you give it the one thing it needs, not your latte, your time. And you will never ever have more of it than you do today. At the start of this, which is the one part of the whole story I actually did expect, and still don't think most people truly believe until it's too late to act on it. So act on it now. Start the pond today. And in 30 years on the steep part of the curve, you'll understand exactly what that coffee was trying to tell you.